So welcome to the Centre for Experimental Archaeology and Material Culture. This is our early medieval roundhouse, which was burnt down in May 2019. This is March 2021, and this is after our excavation. And I'm going to take you through a tour of some of the interesting features on the site. We're moving towards the doorway, which you can see the door frame in front of you there. You can see that the threshold smouldered away down into a cavity and is mostly completely gone. You can see fragments of a stone axe there in front, which exploded in the extreme heat, which is intriguing. As you're moving along here, the house wall isn't really clear, but what is very striking is that it's essentially in an annular dip, and that's because we actually introduced clay into the centre of the house to build up the floor level. So you would actually see that in an archaeological site if the floor has been raised. Moving along, you can see various things. These are Thatcher's tools, which the Thatcher left behind him. This was a bucket of iron ore, which was destroyed in the fire, and you can see fragments of the bucket staves and the bucket head there. And the iron ore has now become a layer or a lens of iron ore on the floor, which would be discernible in an archaeological excavation, but you wouldn't have known that it was actually in a vessel. Moving along, you can see various other features of modern shovel there, things like rope. There's the hearth or the fireplace in the centre, which hasn't been particularly changed. Various other features here, possible fire reddened floor. We wouldn't really know as yet because most of the material that you can see there is actually the roof, thatching and the post and wattle, which would have come down in the fire, so that's still covering most of the floor. This was a 19th century butter churn which stood about 1 metre in height, and that was completely destroyed, only leaving the iron hoops. But on top of it were crucibles and stone lamps and pottery and so on, and they're sitting there in the charcoal of the head or the lid of the vessel. This is the bedding area of the house. You can see there's a grassy, mossy looking material. That's actually grass sods that were placed down on the lowest level of the bed, which was covered over then by roundwood timbers, which then had lighter branches and then ultimately bracken and blankets and so on. So all we have left is the very lowest level of the bed, which is the grassy layer, and also the heavier timbers. Interestingly enough, you can see that they're not actually fully burnt, because as the thatch came down on top of the bed, it would have actually covered over that and smothered it, and so that wood would have smouldered rather than burnt away. This is a deposit of pottery that was sitting on top of the bed, and this pottery exploded in the heat, but strikingly it has changed over the 2 years since the fire. You know, at the time of the fire, the day after the fire, it was we could see the kind of the oxidized red colours and the black reduced colours. Now it's all gone that kind of the black, that dark colour. There was another pot over there, which you can see there, and a fragment of that pot seems to have arrived over here. We're not really sure why. Perhaps as it broke, it scattered fragments. Similarly, there's a pot with a perforation there, pot shared, and there's another one over here. So clearly some of the pottery has moved in the fire. Stepping back into the house, onto the bed here again. These are fire-cracked stones. These were used for heating water in a wooden bucket, and they were left right at the edge of the bed. You can see the edge there, and these fire-cracked stones are basically as they were. They're not particularly more damaged than they would have been beforehand. Iron tools, iron working tools, tongs and a ladle, and other objects which were being used as tools stored inside the house, and they have been fused actually in the heat of the fire. They may be recoverable, but they're probably very damaged as well. So there are some of the main features that we can see. There's lots of other stuff going on. There's finds, there's hooks and iron tools and remains of things. That's the remains of a wooden stool, which completely burnt away. Unfortunately, they were very fond of it, but that was destroyed in the fire as well. So one of the things that we're kind of realising is that as much as there's lots of interesting things happens in the moments of the fire itself, in that 10-15 minutes before the house was destroyed. But in the years since, things have changed too. Plants come in, vegetation comes in, worms and insects come in, perhaps foxes, and of course we've walked over this surface on occasion as well. Nothing's ever set in time, and a burnt down house continues to change in the months and years after the initial destruction of the structure. So we're learning a lot of interesting things, a lot of provocative things, a lot of questions have been raised by this excavation, which lead us to think in new ways about the archaeological material and go back and look at some genuine destroyed houses to see, do we replicate them in some ways, and are there ways of using our material to understand the archaeological evidence better, which of course is the role of experimental archaeology.